Hey, it's me, Nalthazar, and welcome to another Magic the Gathering Puzzle Quest video. In today's video, I'm going to be going over a brand new Planeswalker entering Magic the Gathering Puzzle Quest, Niko Aris. So, let's get into it. As of the time of my recording this video, Niko is currently in the vault. You'll see that Niko's in here with 8 days, 9 hours left for when I am doing the recording. So if after this video you want to go ahead and pick Niko up, he'll be in the vault for just over a week. Now, a really quick shout out to Oktagon. Thank you for hooking me up with this bundle so that I could put this video together. I really appreciate it. And your guys' continued support and everything, it's very much appreciated. So Niko Aris is a brand new blue-white Planeswalker, and blue-white is a fantastic color combination. Niko's three abilities are Shards of Reality, Dimensional Rift, and Glimpse of the Multiverse. The mana bonuses for Niko are going to be +5 to both blue and white, and -2 to green, while having neutral mana bonuses to black and red, this all being at max level. Now, the +5/+5 is definitely, in my opinion, the best mana gains that you can have for a dual color Planeswalker. I also really like the +4, +3, +2, +1 variant of mana gains, but +5/+5 is definitely the best, just because with the gem conversion that we have available to us, it enables you to make really consistent decks with very high mana gains. The first ability of Niko, Shards of Reality, is going to create a Shards of Reality token. Then you're going to exile the first 4 cards from your library. If a support card is exiled this way, draw a card. If a spell is exiled this way, gain 3 mana. And the Shards of Reality token is going to be an emblem with 3 shields, and have, when a support is destroyed from play, draw a card and it gains X mana, where X is the number of this support's reinforcements. So this first ability is very much ability based on Foretell, because when you use the first ability and you exile cards from your library, if any of those cards have Foretell and you don't already have a copy of one of those Foretell tokens on the battlefield, then you're going to get a copy of that card on the battlefield as a support. Furthermore, when one of those supports are destroyed, so when one of your Foretell supports are destroyed, then you're going to draw a card and give it mana based on the number of reinforcements on Shards of Reality. So realistically speaking, you're not going to get a whole bunch of mana on the card that you're drawing, but at the very least, it's going to make it so that you're just constantly loading up on cards, so you constantly have things to be foretelling. The second ability, Dimensional Rift, is going to cost 15 loyalty. You're going to disable target creature until the beginning of your next turn. Then draw 2 cards and deal X damage to all disabled creatures. Those cards gain X mana. X is the number of cards in your hand. So all of those things were the deal X, gain X, etc. That's all going to happen after you draw the cards. So at the very least, X should equal 2. However, ideally, if you're going to be using this second ability, you're going to have 6 cards in your hand after drawing the 2. And so you're going to deal 6 damage to all disabled creatures, and the cards that you draw are going to be gaining 6 mana. The third ability, Glimpse of the Multiverse, is going to make it so that your creatures gain unblockable. Then they get +X/+X and are reinforced Y times. X is the number of cards in your hand, and then Y is the number of cards in your hand with full mana. So to break down the third ability, when you use the third ability, your creatures are going to get a permanent power toughness buff equal to the number of cards in your hand. So when you use the ability, if you have 4 cards in your hand, then all of your creatures are going to get a permanent +4/+4 buff. If you have 6 cards in your hand, all of your creatures are going to get a permanent +6/+6 buff. Then after that buff is applied, for each card in your hand that has full mana, you're going to reinforce each of your creatures. So if you have 2 cards in your hand with full mana, then you're going to also reinforce all of your creatures twice. If you have 6 cards in your hand with full mana, you're going to reinforce all of your creatures 6 times. Those buffs are all permanent buffs. Glimpse of the Multiverse is just another example of how Niko is really designed to be played with Foretell, as when you get those Foretell tokens back, they're going to come back with full mana in your hand, and so you're going to constantly be getting cards in your hand from the first ability, Shards of Reality, and then with the third ability, ideally, you're going to have not only a bunch of cards in your hand, but you're going to have cards with full mana in your hand, so that you use that third ability, you give a big power toughness boost to your creatures, you reinforce them, and it serves sort of as an I win button. So that's really how Niko is designed. Let's go ahead and check out some gameplay with Niko, and then I'll give you some of my thoughts and conclusions about this walker. So in this first match that I have for you guys, this is going to be a Foretell deck. So the first match will be Foretell, the second is not Foretell. And so you'll notice that as I'm playing this match, I'm going to be going ahead and throwing away all the different cards that I can with Foretell from my hand to make sure that I get those tokens out on the battlefield. I'm running Dismantling Wave in the deck as a way of trying to make Foretell a little bit more consistent, as it's going to be able to destroy all of the support tokens that I'm putting on the battlefield and then just put them straight in my hand with full mana. Now, Vega the Watchful is a very interesting creature, Watcher, as it's going to make it so that I draw even more cards whenever I play something with Foretell. So here you'll get to see the Dismantling Wave already. I'm going to use it and by cycling it, and then that's going to go ahead and give me all of the different cards that I have in play in my hand with full mana. And so I've got Alrund's Epiphany. I'm able to throw another Starnheim onto the battlefield to try and start whittling its shields down, get more angel tokens. And you'll ultimately find that between the joint combinations of Niko's abilities, and if you have all the different Foretell cards to make it work, that this is a way that you can make Foretell work, especially if you did not buy the bundle that just came out in conjunction with Niko in order to play Foretell. So you don't actually need to buy both bundles in order to make Foretell work. However, if you do get both of them, it definitely makes Foretell easier to work. So here you'll see that I'm already getting a whole bunch of angel tokens down. They've got Vigilant, so they're going to be blocking some nasties. I'm able to throw a Mystic Reflection onto the battlefield as a support, which will enable me to start reinforcing my angels a little bit more, make it so they can block a little bit better. And then I'm just sort of considering what to do here. The obvious play is going to be to start whittling down shield counts on some of my supports, so I'm going to be doing that. I'm going to use a Mystic Reflection, as you can only have one copy of a card in exile with Foretell at a time. So if you're wondering why I'm not like throwing out the second Starnheim in my hand, or why I'm not throwing out the second Mystic Reflection, why is it that I casted it without actually using the Foretelled mechanic? It's because you can only have one copy at a time. So the Showdown of the Scalds is actually going to make it so that I can pop some more support shield tokens. Some of my supports tokens shields. And so that's going to enable Foretell just a little bit more. And so you'll see that pretty much this whole deck is based on enabling Foretell. Now, I also froze down the Starnheim Unleashed in my hand last turn instead of casting it, so that if my opponent did have some kind of removal, it wouldn't just get rid of all of my angels outright and then put me in a situation where I couldn't really do anything. So I will, however, use this Mystic Reflection on my angels. I'm going to go ahead and cast yet another Starnheim Unleashed. And so you'll see that I'm actually getting quite a lot of these Foretold cards in my hand with full mana that I'm able to use. And so I'm going to be giving my angel tokens double strike. And here you'll see that I just have massive power. I am 2 HP away from basically one-shotting Tyvar here. And this game is going to be a wrap. Now, you'll also notice that I'm only using my first ability in this deck, and for the most part, when you're playing Foretell with Niko, you're going to want to be spamming your first ability, and if you somehow get to your third ability because of like Cascades or something like that, then it can be really nice to use it to close out the game, but otherwise, you might as well just keep using your first ability for that consistency, because if you are playing your deck well, you want it to be consistent. You want to be able to just smack down your opponent a lot, so I'm going to be buffing up my angels just a little bit more. I'm going to be actually getting another Kaya's Onslaught here, which is really sweet. So my little Starnheim angel tokens are now going to be swinging for, 114 damage because of the double strike, and that's going to be the end of Tyvar. So let's take a look at my second match. So for match number 2 here, I'm going in an entirely different direction. I actually am not using anything with Foretell in my deck. The goal of this is going to be very different. So the goal with this deck is going to be to try and get as many cards in hand with full mana as possible, and then pop the third ability as a way of effectively one-shotting our opponent, as the third ability is definitely a very lethal ability. So you'll see that I'm going to actually be trying to charge up my Prismatic Bridge. I want to try and get as many copies of Urza on the battlefield as I can, and then after I get Urza, I want the Icebreaker Kraken to be the card that I'm killing my opponent with. So here I get a fairly fortunate match in that it gives me quite the big cascade, and it gets me my bridge. And then the bridge gets me Urza. Now, on the plus side, right, I know that a lot of you are probably saying, wow, Nelthazar, this deck is very Mythic and Masterpiece heavy. And the previous deck you used was actually had very specific cards. There were quite a few Mythics and there were some Masterpieces in that one. And the plus side for this particular deck is that the Prismatic Bridge is going to become available to all players in its full art version. I mean, I know that there are a lot of cards in this deck that are not as easily accessible, but at the very least, Fiblethip's offerings are going to make it a little bit more accessible. So here I'm very close to my third ability. I've got both Urza and my Kraken down, which tells me that I'll probably be able to kill Garruk the moment that I'm able to use my third ability. So at this stage, what I want to do is I want to get a full hand of cards. So I wind up playing the Castle Vantress because Vantress is going to not only convert gems, which will get me my loyalty faster, but it's also going to activate gems with blue to draw me extra cards. And so you'll see here that I've actually got a blue landfall that I will be able to take advantage of, which is going to draw me 2 cards. And so here I'm actually going to cast my Thassa. I'm going to use my Seagate Restoration. I've got a full hand of 6 cards. I am going to flicker Urza to improve the Urza support token, and I'm hoping that the gem conversion here is going to make it so that I can have 6 cards with full mana in my hand. So we get another Urza from the bridge, which is actually pretty perfect. We get an incredible amount of conversion because that's just the way that Urza is. Our lands are converting more, and we do have, indeed, 6 cards with full mana in hand. So this is a really easy way to get 6 cards with full mana in hand. Other ways, you'll see that I've got Emergent Ultimatum in the deck, but that's another way that you can get a few. We're going to use our third ability, and you're going to see just how much the creatures are going to buff up here. So our Kraken's at 86, Urza's at 38. That's already going to be 124 damage. That's good enough to kill pretty much any Planeswalker in the game. And this is a permanent buff too. So that's going to be the end of Garruk as soon as we get to swing in with an attack. And that really showcases just how powerful Niko's third ability can be if you have the right cards to make it so that you can fairly easily get to having 6 cards in hand and have them with full mana. So I will say that this was, I want to say, the 3rd or the 4th match that I played with this deck, and all of them had the same conclusion. So with this deck, it's pretty easy to make this happen. So let's get into my conclusion about Niko now that you've seen 2 different ways to play him. So in conclusion, Niko Aris is a very solid Planeswalker. Being both blue and white is a fantastic combination. It's one of the best combinations in the game, especially for making a control deck. Having the +5/+5 in both white and blue are both absolutely fantastic mana gains for Niko, and so it's going to enable you to make a lot of decks if you have a lot of gem conversion at your disposal. You will notice that the decks that I ran were fairly Mythic and Masterpiece heavy. I've done quite a lot of testing with Niko. I want to say that I've been playing with Niko somewhere in the realm of like 14 hours since Niko dropped. I've put a lot of time into Niko. And what I've noticed about Niko is that you really need to have a more substantial collection to make Niko feel powerful. Because the first ability is going to be relying on the Foretell mechanic. And so if you don't have the enablers for Foretell, then you're going to find that Niko is going to stagnate. And for the third ability, you need to have cards in your hand that have full mana. And so really the best way to do that is by having access to a lot of gem conversion and card draw, which will pair very well with Niko's excellent mana gains. So because of this all, I would personally put Niko somewhere in the range of C on my tier list. Niko has the ability to be a very powerful Planeswalker, but you definitely need to have a collection of cards to make him that way. If you're a person who doesn't mind putting money in the game, getting both Niko and the bundle for Foretell at the same time definitely could make some sense, as the 2 bundles do work together very well, but they aren't going to be like that top tier bundle where it's one of those situations where you absolutely, no matter what, have to have it. Will it be something that's fun to play with? Yes. Will it be something that can be strong? Yes. Can you make very consistent decks out of it? Yes. So ultimately, at the end of the day, it comes down to how it is that you like to play the game and what it is that you want to do. But those are my general thoughts on Niko. If you're wondering why I didn't include any of my gameplay footage with any of my Pauper decks, because I did indeed actually play quite a few hours using Pauper decks with Niko. They were just a lot bit slower. And so I just didn't want you to have to sit through 10-minute matches where the max power of one of my creatures was in the 15 to 20 range. So that's really where that comes from. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.